Here's a little Appalachian history of the way it was in these mountains, and still is in a lot of places. And this is just something that you'll never learn in school. A lot of people say, well, that's just silly superstition. But no, it's more a tradition here in these mountains. Always has been, and it still goes on today in some places. So I'm going to share with you what a mountain wake is. These little Appalachians are so remote. Some really remote places back in these mountains. And most of these people were rough mountain people that come back in here back in the old days. Most of them were Scots-Irish, but there was other people come in here too. And they were really remote. And they were on their own back in these old mountains, in these communities, far from anybody else. They lived a hard life. And some of them died a hard life too. But these old people, they were on their own back in these mountains. They didn't have no doctor to come and take care of them. Most places never seen a doctor. They were on their own. They lived off these mountains. And it was sad when your elders got down and there was nowhere to take them. There was no rest home, no hospital, no care facilities. Your home was the care facility. You took care of them. And if they're Christian people, you had prayer villages over them all the time, praying for their health to get better. And a lot of times they was suffering. They used the herbs and the plants out of these mountains to ease their suffering. But when they passed on, and you know they knowed the Lord, you didn't worry about them, because their troubles was over. But the old tradition is, they would go around and they'd stop all the clocks in the house. That's just an old tradition they done, custom in these mountains. They'd go around and open some windows so the spirit could leave. Just a tradition and customs. And I have seen them cover mirrors up. That way the spirit can't see the body and try to return. And when the whole family knowed about it, all work come to a stop. It didn't matter if you worked in the mines, on a farm, it didn't matter. That was the way it was in these mountains. A lot of them come off these farming communities, raising crops, big families. A lot of them worked in these mines and all these hollers and these Appalachians. So much tragedy too. But that's the way it was. And nowadays you just go to your local funeral home and you set up arrangements and they have visitation there. Like this. Friends and family get together before the funeral. But they didn't have that back in them days. They didn't have no place to go, so they done it in their home. And they done stuff called a wake. In all the community, the more well-known they was, the bigger the community would come together to help each other out, especially the family in a time of need. Now they would prepare their own coffins, back before they had these fancy coffins and all that stuff, family and friends, dig their own graves, usually in little community graveyards, or even behind the house at times. That's the way it was in these old mountains. And the women would prepare the body and get it ready for the wake. Or for the wake, this is what was called keening. Keening is a word what they mean for somebody crying and wailing over the body. And when they viewed the body in the home, people come, but the family members, one stayed with them all the time. And they would sing hymns and stuff, the community and friends and family. Read the Bible. But always somebody stayed with the body 24/7 until it was buried. That was just the way it was. And they made big meals too. The women of the community would get together and cook for the family. And they'd all have a big get together for this wake. Everybody would stay there at night. The kids didn't understand. I've been to a couple of these when I was a little old bitty thing. I didn't understand. The kids would be outside playing around just like normal. They didn't understand. And the men folk, they would just recollect how they knowed him, celebrate his life, and yes, I've seen them pass around some moonshine too. And they would have a big dinner, everybody would. But the closer you was to the deceased, the harder it was to do anything. And the community knowed that. That's why they served him. And they stayed up with him all night long. I believe, tradition was they would light candles around the body so he could help find his way into the afterlife. But I never worried about people that know God, know the Lord, because their troubles is over. Next day, whenever they decide to have a funeral, sometimes the wake lasts a day, maybe two, but they'd all get together to have the funeral at the home. And they would carry the body out to where they're going to be buried at. Maybe just a few yards from the house, maybe a mile. But they'd all march together. Sometimes it's on top of an old mountain, overlooking the country that they loved. And the local preacher family would have graveside services. I can remember this when I was little. My grandparents. It's so sad. But you don't really understand till you get older. This is my great-great-grandfather right here. And if you're lucky, a lot of these people in these mountains, they was next to a church cemetery where they was cared for. But sometimes they buried in the country cemeteries out in the middle of nowhere. And this is places like these buried and all these hollers in these mountains. And you run into these from time to time. And as generation after generation goes by, you lose a bit of history, piece by piece. And 3 or 4 generations down the road, some of these graveyards look like this. Forgot about, gone, nobody knows about them no more. Their time has come and gone. But that's how it goes for all of us as time goes on. Our time here on earth is just a short time. So I thought I'd share that little history with you of how it was in these mountains. This has happened to so many families, and it's going to happen to everyone at one time. So I hope you enjoyed this. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.